All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about this show that I watched. The new it's apparently it's such a new anime that the dubs weren't even done. I got through the first 9 episodes of the dub, and then I had to switch over to sub because there were 3 more episodes, and I didn't have them. So, my dress up darling. Um, I have gotten really into like I did for a while, and then I stopped watching them. Like last year I was into them, like the rom-com sort of anime shows. um as far as rom-coms go, Toradora was definitely one of my favorites. Probably my at this point, probably my favorite rom com was Toradora. I loved it. I thought that it was great. I thought that it had fantastic moments. I liked the characters. Hey, Al Broski. I liked the characters. Even the ones that I should have hated, like you know what I mean, mean characters like Taiga. I should have hated, and I actually really enjoyed them. So I really liked that show. This show, My Dress Up Darling, has the potential to dethrone Toradora for me. This was an amazing experience. I was gonna say show, and really it was an amazing experience for a couple of different reasons. I own Toradora. Toradora is a really good show. I highly recommend you watch that show. Did you not finish? No. I finished the season. I switched over to there was no shot that I was not going to finish it. I switched over to the sub in order to watch the rest of it. And for anybody freaking out, I like dubs. I have no problem with dubs. As long as it's a good dub. What I have learned is that when I don't have to focus on the reading, I pay more attention to the story, and I see more of the animation. I know that it's probably, for the hardcore sub people, you're probably laughing at me, but the reality is I have better engagement with the show and with the story and with the characters than when I have to read everything. And here's another thing, and I have to add my own inflection on a lot of things because I don't understand the nuance of Japanese inflection when it comes to language. So when characters talk with a certain not dialect, but like with certain intention behind their words. I'm trying to find a better term for that. But like when they talk with a certain inflection, I don't understand the nuance of Japanese inflection. So when somebody says, "Oh man," right? Like if somebody says that in Japanese, there are sometimes things that they infer certain things or imply certain things by the way they say them, and I don't always understand it. But when it's in English, I absorb it a lot more easily. So I just have a better time watching dubs. That's just the way it is. So I was watching it, and then I finished it, and I'm like, no, there's no shot that I'm not watching the rest of this show. And I'm not going to do any spoilers. I'm not going to talk about spoilers with the show. For a non-Japanese speaker, it's either speaking or yelling. I can't tell if there's... Yeah, and somber, and I think that's a good thing, is that sarcasm can get lost, and that's like a cultural difference. So sarcasm can get lost, and I need to know all of that. I need to know all of those tones. Not to mention the fact, like I said, half the time I end up trying to read the words really fast and then look at the images because it's always really nice to look at the show itself, and I don't have to do that when I watch a dub, so I'm okay with it. Yeah, Japanese don't really have sarcasm, as we know. What they do have is very polite or rude way of saying things. Sarcasm falls into rude way of saying things. So yeah, but I like it. I like that there's, and so maybe that's sort of a difference, but either way. So When I first started it, I was worried that it was going to be the standard. She's really mean to him, and he's sort of the nerdy guy. She's gonna force him to come out of his shell, and I'm probably gonna not like her in the beginning. She's gonna get on my nerves, and then eventually, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, which wasn't entirely wrong about Taiga from Toradora. In the beginning, she was super mean, and that was sort of, but it worked. I guess it worked really well for me, so I didn't really mind it too much. But she did at the very beginning. It did sort of. There was the danger of, oh, she's just like the mean character. She's just like the bully character. Purchase me for Attack on Titan sub. Manic Pixie Dream Girl Fantasy. So when I started, that's what I thought it was going to be, and then they were able to get rid of that really quickly. I liked the main character. I thought the guy was fine. Gojo. I thought Gojo was fine, and then when we met her, I think they did a good job relatively quickly of making it of the point that, okay, she's not going to be this character. First of all, she was super nice. She seemed to be super nice to everybody. She seemed to be nice to him. She wasn't like mean to him, and then slowly but surely she became friends with him. Like it was relatively quick that she was pretty nice to him. So I was like, okay, we're in it. We're all right. When they established that she was the nerd, basically, she was the otaku, eroge, fan. I was like, okay, dude. I'm already in with this character. I already really kind of like this character. I had already seen clips on that, and that was what got me into the show, was that I had already started getting clips on YouTube about certain things. So I knew the premise and I knew certain things were happening, but I didn't know the personalities of the characters. I had just seen certain events. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna watch this show. I was just enthralled. I was enthralled with the moments. There were more than a few, I would say. Then that's a big problem with are you gonna play later, Powder? I would do talking first. There with rom-coms, unfortunately, a lot of the time you do one or the other relatively well, and you kind of do the other one well enough. I think that this actually did both of them incredibly well. I think that the romance and in the love interest aspect of the show was done just as well as the humor. I laughed a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought that it was just hysterical. I thought that some of the jokes they did were hysterical. I thought some of the comedic timing was perfect. I absolutely loved some of the faces. No, it can't be Team Fortress 2. I absolutely loved some of the faces that they had, some of the character that some of the characters made. I thought that they were just terrific. It was so, there was so much personality in the characters for a show that ultimately is driven by two characters. It's always kind of rough. Yeah, oh my God. And Ryan, and the fact that it cut to like a more childish animation version, right? The art style completely changed. It's like, I thought that was great. My favorite scene is when Marin looks up at Gojo and suddenly blushes, sparkles, and she's aware. Is that the touch? Is that the accidental touch? Is that what you're talking about? My favorite moment is when he sees her room. He sees her room, freezes. Yeah, I love that. Like, there's one of my favorite lines was, and I don't think any of this is spoilery. I without context, you're not going to really understand any of this. But when she's talking about the game, and they're talking about like a different series, and she's talking about like the interpersonal relationships between the characters, and they're like, oh, because this character is actually gay, and so the relationship was doomed. Like, it goes into all the thing, and the best, it's like a super quick line, and he goes, "Kids watch this," and it cracked me up because all I could think of was Avatar and anime and so many other things where Steven Universe, where you think about all these deep interpersonal relationships, and that's the sort of thing you think is like, kids watch this. Oh, when they're washing the wig and she looks up, oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Oh, Bishy? I never heard that word before. Pretty boy or girl. Okay, I never heard that word before. But yeah, it did a lot of the romantic moments really, really well, and that's sort of one of the moments. My favorite moment, which I won't get into, was episode 11. It was in the hotel room, and it was the thing where they panicked a little bit. I won't describe it any more than that. I absolutely love that scene. Bish is a prefix used for Bishonen and Bishoju, which is pretty boy, pretty girl. I loved that scene in episode 11 because what I realized, and I had sort of realized it before, but I think that was the best example of it. One thing that the show does incredibly well, is when an intense moment happens, they allow the moment to simmer. There's the one scene where I don't remember what episode it was. It might have been like episode 4. The one scene when he touches her by accident. He touches her somewhere. And he doesn't realize that he did it, but she does. So he sees her, and she, like, her face is red, like she's embarrassed. And then so he thinks that the heat is, like, it's too hot. So he goes to turn on the AC, and you can hear him in the back, and he's like, oh, it's going to be hot. And she doesn't say anything. She just sort of stands there kind of shocked, kind of absorbing everything. She does that thing with her hair where she kind of just strokes her hair, and then she just kind of like, and it's like, she does they do this thing in the show where they react how I feel like I would react. Was it episode 2 when he's doing the measurements? It's when he's doing the measurements. Yeah, his like brain is fried, and he doesn't want to look at her. Was it? Or I don't know why I thought it was episode 4. It's when he's doing her measurements. That's when it is. Episode 2. It almost like it reacts in the way I think I would react in a real life situation, and it reacts the way I react when I'm watching the show, which is I just sort of take it all in. And I posted a comment on Twitter yesterday, and I was talking about reaction videos. And I love watching reaction videos because they're a great way to revisit your favorite moments from shows and movies and video games. What I realize I don't like is when the reaction people, and I know that the joke is like, oh no, they're reacting, how dare they? But it kind of kills the tone for me. Like, I wish that this was not their first time watching it. I wish that this was not their first time experiencing some of these moments, which I know they are, because that's the point of those reaction videos, is that they want to react to it as it happened. But there's something to me about when a scene happens in a show and it's shocking. Not like a freak out shock, but it's supposed to be, there's a lot of weight to the scene. You know, but what you hear is, oh my God, here we go. He's going to get it. Oh, it's going to happen. And it's just like, just watch the show. Like this is a moment like that. And I get that. And again, if you're a reactor, you react however you want to react. But it really does sometimes feel like they're almost not paying attention. Like, I watched a ton of reaction videos about that particular scene. Some of them even missed some of the things that were happening in the scene because they were doing their reaction thing. They were being live on camera, and it's like they're not actually watching it. And that was that was at that point. You should know that that's what the show did really well, which is it gave you these gasp moments where you were not supposed to react to it. You were supposed to wonder what's going to happen next. That's where the show was sort of leading you. And the scene that I'm talking about in particular did it very well because in the scene, this is what happens. Well, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the scene, but it was clearly meant to be that. It was clearly meant to be this silent, dramatic moment because what they did was all you really hear, other than another sound going on, is you hear the characters breathing, and they created this tension of this intensity of the situation because it happens and then everything stops, and then slowly but surely their breathing ramps up, and you can tell this is like an intense what's gonna happen moment, and it's real quiet, and it's I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. This is going to sound weird. If you know the scene, you might agree with me. You might not agree with me. If you don't know the scene, you won't know what I'm talking about. You probably won't believe me. It is probably one of the sexiest moments I've ever seen in an anime. It really was. Yes. AGM. It really was like this sort of combination of sexy, romantic, intense moments. And it was incredible. And that was what the show did so well. The show had so many moments of it had hysterical laughs. There were some laughs that I just thought were a riot. And then there were moments where you are quiet and you want to see it happen. You want to see it play out. I'm going to punch that guy in the face, the person that works at the hotel. I want to punch him in the face for what he did. Yeah, Love Hotel. Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but that's what it was. I've seen that in Nintendo Direct reaction. I'm sorry, I'm on a roll here. I've seen that in Nintendo Direct reaction videos. Some of them excited at something that they missed the next announcement, and at the end complained that about a thing not being there when it actually was. Yeah, I mean, I for all I know, I'm probably guilty of that too. We joked when was it Metroid Prime 4 was announced, and people were freaking out. And then we joke because I think it was Metroid Prime 4 where the next game after it was Yoshi's Crafted World, and we all said like, "Oh, I feel bad for Yoshi's Crafted World drawing the short straw because for the next 2 minutes after the Metroid Prime announcement, no one was going to talk about anything else. They were going to be screaming, they were going to be freaking out. No one was going to sit there quiet and watch the next part. Like poor Yoshi's Crafted World drawing the short straw on that one." One thing I admire the show, it's one of the few romance stories that could have only worked with the high school setting. I don't think you could have gotten the same energy if you settled the characters on different ages. AGM. I'm going to disagree with that. I'm actually going to disagree with that because I do think that if those characters were older, let's say they were older, and let's say they were honestly, if they were older, that would be a little bit something more like was it My Life as an Otaku? Oh my God, what the heck was the show? Was that the show? I think it was My Life as an Otaku. I think that was the one. I think that does. Life is hard for otaku. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Life is hard for otaku. I think that it does work at a later point because when you think about it, the high school setting was actually kind of irrelevant to the story. The love is hard. Sorry. The high school setting was actually pretty irrelevant to the show. You could have made them older and had them be at jobs and still sort of get the same thing. You know, I would disagree. I would say that you can do that. I mean, it obviously works better for other than the Love Hotel moment. I think that's something that was funnier because they were younger. But other than a few aspects, no, I think that it would work. I absolutely think it would work. I once watched this guy react to the 2 new awakenings for the new Phantom Thieves and Persona 5 Strikers. The second one was just so over the time. The best way I could describe it is, I don't know what's happening or why, but I'm very excited about this. The only thing I think the series could have done better was have the little sister not pass all that well as the guy character. For all the talk about inclusivity and cosplaying, it kind of makes everyone overly fit. Kind of unintentionally gives you the idea that you need to look back, that you need to look good to do it. I think it would have been thematically better if the little sis, but still enjoyed it, but obviously can't pass as a high school. Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think that's a very minor thing, so I have no problem with how they handled it. But yeah, that would have been interesting, which is funny because when I was watching it, that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought that it was going to be like super clear that it was her, but that her sister was still going to be very happy with it. You know, she was still going to have a lot of fun and they were still going to enjoy themselves. Like, I thought that would have been an interesting moment where it is a bad looking cosplay, but the sister is still like, oh yeah, we're absolutely gonna, like, she could have been embarrassed, like, you know, you're a popular cosplayer, I don't want to take pictures with you and ruin it, and her sister would have been like, yeah, we're still gonna take the pictures. Like, that would have been a nice touching moment. That would have been a nice little touching moment. But it helped that they weren't really in a ton of it, you know, and they were kind of irrelevant to the story overall. The shower thing was kind of funny though. Thank God she was an older thank God she ended up being older. Because that would have really, I would have been really upset, right? If I thought that scene was funny and then it turned out she was younger. I mean, if, for instance, the hotel scene, that one works well because it's a teenager situation. A lot of their dialogue and situations fit with their ages. You're right. And the way they react to their feelings works better. Yeah. Okay. In that regard, yes, AGM. The fact that they're teenagers, the fact that they're discovering these feelings for the first time, the fact that they don't know if these feelings are what they want. Yeah, I can agree with that. Is it still the kind of show you would immediately turn off if one of your non-geeky friends or family members walked in on you watching it? It can be. So, Mr. L, it can be because it is basically an ecchi show. It's not super ecchi. You're not watching like Queen's Blade or Tengo Tenji or something like that, right? It's not like, or what I don't think it's one of the Fate shows that does it. I forget. There's a show that does it where every time the character gets hit, like their shirt rips, right, and you can almost kind of half see their boobs. It's not that bad, but there are a couple of moments where it put it this way. Yeah, like high school DxD? Which one am I thinking of? Oh, no problem, Ryan. Senran Kagura, I guess it's like that. See, I don't think Fairy Tail was like that. No, not Dragon Ball. But no, it's nothing. No. God, Freeze? Is there a show called Freeze Was Freeze like that? Where every time it was like the first 2 or 3 episodes. High School of the Dead is the one that I was thinking of. High School DxD I didn't watch. High School of the Dead was like that. That was an ecchi show. Is Fairy Tail? I only watched like the first 10 episodes of Fairy Tail. Did have a lot of that stuff. I mean, Gray did take his shirt off a lot in that show. But yeah, it was not like, it was not that bad. But there were a few moments. Here's what I would say. They don't shy away from, if the camera angle's a little weird, if the situation's a little awkward, if the conversation's a little weird. There's a show called Freezing. Can you link me a picture of that? Maybe that's the show I'm thinking of. They don't shy away from that. And I think that that's important. I think that there were some great jokes in there about because the game the game series that she really likes in the beginning when you're talking about it, like the cosplay that they're making is an eroge game. They're like porn games basically. So but they don't show the games like they're not showing porn or anything, but she's talking about them. And then there's a hilarious moment where they're talking about it out in public. And they're talking about it as they walk past a crowd of people, and the crowd is like they're freaking out over what they hear them talking about, and it's hysterical. They don't shy away from that stuff. Okay, yes, it is this show. So I mean, right from this picture you can see it. That's a show where every time the characters get into a fight, shirts get busted open. Yeah, a little not safe for work, but only a little. That's what ecchi shows are. You see a lot of big bouncing boobs. You see a lot of sexual situations, but you don't see nudity. You don't see sex. So they're kind of hard PG-13. Imagine a movie that is as PG-13 as you can possibly be, without crossing over into R. That's ecchi. I can't remember the name, but there was one show about an alternate future where Japan got completely banned porn. In fairness, that show had a good reason to be ecchi. But yeah, but that's what this show does. But it doesn't do it so much that it feels like that's the point. That's the problem with a lot of the ecchi shows, is that it feels like the point is, we're gonna push the envelope as far as we can. This is more like we have this stuff because it's part of the story. It needs to be this, like, if we dance around it, it'll be obvious. I used to say that about Game of Thrones and it's sort of Walking Dead, but definitely more Game of Thrones. People used to act like, when I watched Game of Thrones, especially early on, people would say, isn't that show like super violent? Isn't there a lot of like nudity and stuff? And I used to always say that there is violence and nudity, but the show never feels, at least at the time anyway, the show never felt like we were creating these situations so that we can show you more violence. The violence in Game of Thrones, early on especially, the violence was there because they lived in a violent world and violent things happened. And if they shied away from them, you would be able to see it. And it would affect your ability to embrace the world of the show. It was a problem that I had with Walking Dead. That's why I sort of said Walking Dead was kind of like that. But my problem with here's what takes me out of The Walking Dead. What took me out of it when I was watching it, which I still loved it. I thought The Walking Dead was fantastic for like the first 8 seasons. They didn't really curse. That's what takes me out of it, because in those situations you'd be cursing. You'd be dropping F-bombs when things happen. You'd be dropping S-bombs here and there. You would curse. That's just what, especially some of those characters in Walking Dead. You had characters like Merle, who were just jerks, right? He was a massive jerk. He was a huge racist in that show. He was a horrible, horrible person. But the fact that he doesn't curse, the fact that he's a racist and never uses any racist terminology, it eats into the reality of the show, because they're clearly shying away from it because it's a TV show. If Walking Dead was on HBO, there would have been a lot of cursing, and there would have been from Merle, there would have been some racist comments, and people would have said, "Oh my God, I can't believe he says that stuff." Yeah, because he's a racist. Because that is what the character would do, and that's what Game of Thrones did. Game of Thrones, most of the violence and stuff, it fit into the context of the show. They weren't throwing in gratuitous sex scenes. They were at a brothel. And so they were sort of implying it. And even then they weren't really showing anything. It was very seldom like a gratuitous sort of thing. It was just there because that was the setting. So that's sort of what this show does. It's ecchi, but they're not pushing it because they want to show you a bunch of boobs and stuff. Every once in a while, they'll mention something, or you'll see something, a weird angle, and it's just because that's just the situation. That's where they are. That's the world that you're in, and it adds to the realism. Again, for anybody that has seen the show, particular scene in the hotel room is that was something that people were freaking out about when I was watching the reaction videos, and yeah, it was pretty wild because you weren't expecting it. But they didn't shy away from it because that is what would happen. That is exactly what would happen. Yeah, golly gee willikers, I sure do hate this situation we're in. I'll say that it actually embraces the awkwardness of the edginess more than the edginess itself. Yeah, everything in Game of Thrones fit the context of that show until we got, and that's why I say early on, because later on they did start to add some just really gratuitous stuff there. 4Kids had that problem when they localized One Piece. The show had a lot of violence, not graphic, but a lot more than American kids TV would be comfortable showing. And there were attempts to work around that were disastrous. Yeah, I mean, infamously, we all know that Bandit Keith pointed his finger at Pegasus. Even without knowing where that actually comes from, someone has to look at that and go, why is he just getting up there and pointing at him? That's so weird. Like, why would he do that? And it's like, no, because he had a gun and they had to edit it out. Okay? Although the gun didn't really kind of make any sense, because why didn't he use the gun to threaten anybody else? I don't know. For the problem with Walking Dead was that you can kind of tell the story was brilliantly made, but like most stories taking place in the apocalypse, they never know when or how to end it. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Duck. AGM, and it just kind of eats into it. But that's just that's a long-winded discussion about the etchiness of the show. It's not there are a couple of moments where you might like, oh my God, I'm not watching porn, but I mean, it really isn't. But like, again, with one major exception, but it was just really good. Hey, David. Speaking of which, been some upheaval about Disney censoring. Yeah, I saw that. To be fair, the earlier point on the sisters cosplay, part of the point is that Gojo's way better at making and doing the cosplay stuff than even he realizes. So it turns out better than anyone expects. So he makes their dreams a reality. But I do get the point. Yeah, I don't know. I do think that Even having it not be an important scene, given the proportions of the character, when they showed her in the cosplay and it looked the way it did, even I was kind of like, all right, we're kind of pushing it a little bit here, aren't we? Which again, maybe that's just because I haven't seen that sort of transformation on that level in real life. But it was kind of like, we are kind of pushing it a little bit here. But it was fine. I thought I didn't think it was again, it wasn't really that important. And it didn't last that long anyway. Now that one didn't bother me. Kid was just menacing Pegasus of a beating. Menacing Pegasus of a beating in my eye. If there was a scene where the two agents point to Kaiba. Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Just wait till they get to Kill La Kill cosplay. In that I've seen those kinds of things in real life. It's kind of I probably need to see more of them. American Yu-Gi-Oh got robbed of Kaiba throwing a knife at a card. Yeah, I mean that's just it, but you see what I mean when you edit some of that stuff out, when you change some of that stuff, it doesn't fit the world. It doesn't fit the story and the world that you're trying to build there. So this show, Dress Up Darling, did a good job of it. It didn't push it too far. It did it just enough so that you understand this is the world that they live in. These are the things that happen to and going back, AGM, to what you said, some of those awkward situations, yes, they would not work as well if these were adults as opposed to being teenagers. So absolutely, I do absolutely agree with it on that point too. But yeah, overall, that was it was a remarkable show. It was an unbelievable show. I highly recommend, if you have access to it, that you watch it. I don't know what the schedule is as far as the dub, but right now, as of today, which is, March 31st, I finished it yesterday, I think. It's only up to episode 9, so I guess that and the sub is all on there, so it's only a few episodes, but it's only up to episode 9, so you would have to wait for the dubs if you want to watch that. What I will say is that the dub was incredible, because I watched the last 2 episodes or the last 3 episodes in subbed, and I thought that the voices worked incredibly fantastic. The nuance of the conversation wasn't really, there wasn't really much to be what would you say, implied. So I didn't think so anyway. So I don't know. It worked really well, but some of the dubbing was fantastic. There's a great scene where she's looking for him and he's like, she can't find him. And the hats off to the VA for that one. But it's like they cut to different spots and she's like, go Joe. And then in the end, it's like she's at like the gym in a basketball court and she goes, go Joe, come on. Like the way she says it, it's so funny. And I thought that the dub work on that show was just incredible. But overall, it is a terrific show. Highly recommend that you go and you check it out. It's 12 episodes long, so you know it's right up my alley. You know me, I love a good short experience. Terrific rom-com. Did both the rom and the com very, very well. Like I said, some of the best moments were just quietly intense. So it's something where it definitely helps you sort of fall in love with the romance of the situations, if that makes any sense. But yeah, highly recommend you go check that show out. My Dress Up Darling on Crunchyroll. Like I said, 12 episodes. At this point, the sub is all up there, and there's up to 9 episodes are dubbed. So check it out.